Welcome to Rule 8 Politics with Jeremy Sammons and Zach Sacker. This is the podcast where we always tell the truth, or we at least don't lie. So first of all, Jeremy, how are you doing today? How is your week? And what's on your radar?
I'm doing good, man. It was another exciting week, as it has always been, especially in 2020. Um, but hey, let's kind of get into, I guess, the meat of what went down yesterday and the Million MAGA March.
Were there a million MAGA people there?
Well,
Depends who
according
you
to
ask, I guess.
Kaylee, yeah. According to the White House press secretary, yeah, there was more than a million. Um, but yeah, I've seen really wide estimates. I've seen 10,000. I've seen 100,000. What did you think?
It was a lot, all right, but definitely
Yeah,
not a million. And my one takeaway from this point alone is that this White House seems to have a need to always inflate the numbers with everything. This goes back to basically day one with the inauguration.
yeah.
This was the most watched inauguration in all of history, period, with Sean Spicer. Remember that?
Oh,
And now
unforgettable.
it's like the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And there were over a million people at the rally, and it doesn't seem like that. I think at probably like 100,000 at most, which means they fell short like 900,000 people. But still, that's 100,000 people is that's a lot of people. That's a
yeah,
lot of hardcore Trump supporters who are trying to show their support for the president.
yeah. For one of the permits that was pulled for the event, I can't remember if it was a Stop the Steal March for Trump or the Million MAGA March, but the permit application was only for 10,000 people. So
Hmm,
they they
that's
they, uh,
interesting.
they were not expecting a million people to show up at all.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, I makes you wonder if maybe they just named it that just so it sounds good.
it's also
Who
kind of
knows?
insulting
MAGA
to the
Million
civil rights.
March. It kind of,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's also
yep,
insulting to the original Million Man March.
yep.
So
That's true. And you know, I I think they faced off with Antifa and BLM counter protesters at the BLM Plaza, right? Um,
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, a little bit insulting. I could definitely see that.
I also
I
had an
think it was.
appearance from. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
I say we had an
I don't
appearance by
even know what I
Trump.
was gonna say.
Uh,
Oh, of course,
but we had
of course.
yeah appearance. Yeah,
He
yeah, that was interesting. I
he
think
loves
what.
that stuff. He just. Oh man, we keep talking over each other. I think just so everyone who's listening or watching to this, we have a little bit of a delay. So sometimes that like screws us up. We just start talking over each other. But Jeremy, you take it. I'll be quiet for a second.
All right, yeah. So there was an appearance by Donald Trump at the event earlier in the day. I think there's two takeaways from this. The first being that and the reason he was on the road was he was on his way to a golf course in Virginia. Uh,
Yeah, of
the,
course.
uh, the second takeaway though to me is that like nothing crazy happened. That's nothing bad happened to the motorcade. Uh, People behaved
Hmm.
themselves, so I think that really
Hmm.
does at least show to certain extent that yeah these folks in general aren't as violent and extreme as some would lead you to be, right? Because if you
Hmm.
looked at the
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
people on the right in general tend to favor order over disorder. Law and order. Trump is the law and order president, supposedly. I mean, you can also make a very good argument that he is a lawless president, and I tend to agree with that a little bit more. But when it comes to, I guess, the disposition of the conservative versus, um, I guess, a liberal, you would say, or whatever we should call people on the left nowadays. I don't know if liberal really fits the left anymore, but usually people on the right, when they protest, if they protest, it's usually not with the intent to shut stuff down or to vandalize or to, be violent. Usually not. I mean, it does happen, but in general, I think people on the right favor orderly conduct versus disorderly in general. And yes, I keep saying in general. I'm definitely generalizing here. Uh, but yeah, go on.
But if you looked at the way that the media portrayed this event and the people that were in attendance, they were often described as far-right neo-fascist white supremacists. So basically, any news article that you brought up, it talked about the Oath Keepers being there, the Proud Boys, the Three Percenters, Alex Jones, which, I mean, these people definitely were in the crowd. But you know who else was there? Normal fucking people, right? Like, people that aren't radicals, aren't extreme. If like later on in the night where shit started to heat up, there was probably at most 100 self-identified Proud Boys in the streets that night. So at a if this crowd was between 10 and 100,000, and you have around 100 people in the streets afterwards, that's pretty incredible, right? At least I think
most people went home. Yeah, most people were there during the day to show their support, and then they went home at night. And the ones that were hoping to get into some kind of fight, the Proud Boys, I mean, they stayed behind, and predictably, they were met with Antifa at night. And those two groups, they just like to brawl. It's what they're looking for. They're looking for fights for the most part. But it was overly, for the most part, a peaceful protest yesterday. Thankfully, I'm getting a little bit tired of the violence in this country. I think it is worth noting that there were some arrests. I believe, I think I read somewhere at least 21 arrests. I tried to get some information about who was arrested and why, and that was very hard to come across. I do know that somebody was arrested for throwing a commercial grade firework at somebody else. I don't know which side threw the firework. There were 2 police officers who were injured. And I think somebody was, at least one person was arrested for assaulting the police. I don't know exactly who or what side they were from. Let's see. Somebody else was stabbed. There was a stabbing. I don't know what side that person was on. I don't know who did the stabbing. I mean, I really wish I had this information because it would really paint a better picture of who was really instigating the violence once the sun went down. But that information just unfortunately was not available to me. I don't know if you were able to find answers to any of those questions.
No, I wasn't. Only thing I can add to that is by 4:30 yesterday, there were 4 firearm violations, and then throughout the day, and some of these may have been related or multiple charges for one arrest, but 7 firearms were confiscated. It's worth noting that you cannot open carry anywhere in DC. Firearms can only be carried with a district authorized concealed carry permit, and even then they are banned from public demonstrations. So if you were if you were planning on doing a Kenosha out there in DC yesterday, they shut that down.
Yeah. One other point, not so much of a point, but I think it's interesting. Early on in the during the Trump administration, there was that Unite the Right rally, which became very violent in Charlottesville. this was kind of like a Unite the Right rally. And you just named a bunch of right-wing organizations that were there. The Three Percenters, the Proud Boys, was the other one, the Oath Keepers. Not too familiar with them, but I did hear that they were there as well.
The Oath Keepers.
Oath Keepers, what are they about? Do you know anything about them?
They are self-described as nonpartisan association of current and former military, police, and first responders who pledge to fulfill the oath that all military and police take in order to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
So, do you think that they see Joe Biden as an enemy of the Constitution?
If he rigged the election, then
Yeah.
God, yes. That, or I mean, some people really feel that the lockdown measures for the coronavirus are, in violation of the Constitution. I mean,
There's a case to be made there for that.
Yeah. Sometimes, the lockdown measures do go too far, and they're ruled unconstitutional, just like we saw up in Michigan with the state Supreme Court.
Do you think that there's going to be more of these rallies in the upcoming weeks? Is this going to be something that they keep on doing?
I don't think you could have another rally of that size. I think this was probably the last hoorah, unless I mean, something major would have to happen to mobilize that many people again on such short notice between now and January. I mean, I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's kind of unlikely. But what it also comes down to, if some kind of credible evidence comes out in election fraud, of large scale, maybe that will energize the base again. But the longer this process plays out, the more court cases they put forward and it gets struck down, and I think ultimately people are just going to realize that there's no hope in sight, no light at the end of the tunnel, and we just have to face the reality that it's over.
Yeah. There's this conspiracy theory going around that a lot of these people who are chanting "Stop the Steal," these people at this Million MAGA rally, believe there's this theory going around that's saying that the company that created the voting booths, Dominion something, this isn't in my notes here, I'm just kind of riffing on this, but supposedly this company that created the software for tallying the votes was switching votes from Trump to Biden. Now the company has come out and said this is completely false, it's bullshit, but a lot of people are seeming to be grabbing onto this theory and just kind of running with it and spreading it. And a lot of people are starting to really just not trust our system. How dangerous, in your opinion, do you think it is for a large amount of people to not trust our electoral process?
I guess it only takes 3%.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, I think just regarding that subject in particular, that's something you hear every election. I mean, going back to, I mean, people in a voting booth, I remember old videos of people, on a touchscreen, like wanting to vote for Obama, it'd be like switch to Romney or vice versa. Or, I mean, every election, this is a conspiracy or a scandal that arises. And it's, I have enough faith in our institutions, or at least people on the inside, that could blow the whistle on something like this if it truly was like this level of corruption. Which, I mean, there's definitely corruption at every level of government, make no mistake about that. But I think like the biggest thing about the voter fraud thing is, if they were going to rig the vote, like, we wouldn't have lost seats in the House. Democrats would have won the Senate. Bottom line, right? And it's like they're not gonna take the presidency and then have a lame duck 4 years when you can rig it in your favor. So I don't see this being credible. And if it is, man, I would really like to see, like, what were they thinking? Like, what was their plan? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah. I don't think there's any real conspiracy out there either. I just think people really voted for mixed government. They want a return to normalcy. They don't necessarily agree with all the policy ideas that are coming out of the left, defund the police, and the Green New Deal, and expanding the number of states, making Puerto Rico a state, and Washington D.C., and abolishing the Electoral College. I don't think people want that stuff for the most part. I mean, a lot do, but not a majority. But they also want Trump out of office. They want to lower the volume a little bit. And so you had a lot of mixed ballots, Democrat at the top, but then Republicans down ballot. And that's what I just think happened.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to fathom, but that's really what I think happened. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, I think it's just it's going to be interesting to see how these all right. So I think we're to the point now of these, like, people that show up to the march yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
These Trump supporters, they're like, I think we've kind of gone beyond, or they have gone a little beyond the pale. I think it's now appropriate to label these people Trump loyalists, which is really what Trump wants too, by the way. And so
loyalty, above all else.
Right. And what are they loyal to? They are loyal to the Trump regime. They're not loyal to the Constitution, not loyal to American way of government. They are loyal to Trump, his regime, and that is it. And I think that's very concerning.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a very good chance this guy's going to try to run again in another 4 years, and he's hoping to maintain that base of support. There's been a lot of talk this week about him possibly going into the media business and starting his own media company. That's possible as well, and these people would become his patrons essentially. Maybe he does that just to continue being able to be in the limelight, and because there's a good chance he's going to get banned from Twitter once he's out of office. He still needs a way to connect with his people and whatnot, and starting his own media organization would be a great way to go about it. But he lost. It's just a matter of time until he accepts it. He still hasn't conceded, which is a little bit crazy. Yes, every legal vote should count. Every illegal vote shouldn't count. But there's no way that the results in multiple states are going to be overturned. It's not just Georgia, which is doing a recount. He would need to overturn Georgia, Pennsylvania, and I think one other state, Arizona, maybe. And it's just mathematically, statistically, it's just not going to happen. So I just hope, for the sake of the country, that he will accept his loss and concede to Joe Biden, just like every other president who's ran for a second term and failed has done before him. We've had a peaceful transfer of power going all the way back to the beginning, and this would be the first time that the results, one side just does not accept the results. But even like within Congress, I think only 4 Republican senators have acknowledged that Joe Biden has won and have congratulated him. Only 4 senators. Mitt Romney of Utah, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Ben Sass of Nebraska. So that's wild. I think that means there's 48 other Republicans in the Senate who haven't said squat on the matter, or at least or have said, we'll see, something like that. But this election is basically over. Other countries around the world are congratulating Biden. I don't know if you have do you have the list of that by chance?
Yeah, I don't have their names. A lot of these, a lot of these leaders you would know anyway, but some of them you may not be familiar with. So I just went with country. So the president and prime ministers. There's one king on here, but these leaders of these countries have all called, spoken with, and congratulated Joe Biden on his win. We have Canada, the UK, France.
And stop right there already.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one, the UK, because Boris Johnson, people like to compare him to Trump, and they are very comparable, right down to the hair. They have like the same hairdo, So, I mean, that was almost a little bit of a surprise because him and Trump, they kind of got along too, to an extent. So, I mean, all of our allies, that one was a little bit of a surprise. But all right, sorry, keep going.
And there's a couple other bangers on here too. We have Germany, Ireland, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Australia, South Korea, Japan, China.
Yeah, interesting list. I totally understand. He said Canada, France, Emmanuel Macron, and Angela Merkel, Germany. Trump has had a very rocky relationship with those three countries. And they kind of want NATO to be restored, back to the way it was. Maybe they don't want to pay as much, which is one good thing that I think we should all be thanking Trump, is that he got these countries to increase their defense spending. Each country in NATO is supposed to spend at least 4% of their GDP on defense. It's a military alliance, and I mean, it's frankly worthless if countries in the alliance don't have a well-functioning military. We've been by far for a long time, basically the defender of NATO, and it is important for other countries to step up to the plate a little bit. But that aside, there's also been trade issues with these countries. Trump has accused Germany of basically dumping their cars here, and these countries are kind of hoping for a return to normalcy. But Turkey and Saudi Arabia was a big surprise because those countries tended to get along well with Trump. Erdogan in Turkey is a bit of a dictator, and Trump, I mean, there's no secret, he kind of tends to get along better with dictators than he does with democratically elected leaders. Of course, we pulled out of Syria, and that was something that Turkey really wanted us to do. Syria is basically in Turkey's backyard. China is the other interesting one. Not a surprise that they congratulated Joe Biden, but interesting because China is also kind of looking for a return to normalcy, which probably isn't in the best interest of the United States, in my opinion. China, if there is any country that dumps stuff here, it's China. They subsidize the steel industry and basically dump it around the world, pushing steel prices down. They, we really need to maintain a tough on China policy. They are our fiercest rivals right now, in my opinion. And I don't think Joe Biden's going to return to the ways of the Obama administration. I do think that there is a bipartisan recognition that our China policy, our longstanding China policy needs to change a little bit. But I think China overall was pretty happy about the Biden win. Um, anything in particular that stuck out to you among the countries that congratulated Biden?
I thought the Saudis was pretty interesting. You know, the Saudis just had a historic peace deal with Israel,
Yeah.
and the Saudis, instead of doubling down and being like, we want more of this, they're like, no, fuck it, get out of here, man. We're going with the next guy.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden, in his defense, I mean, he's had a relationship with every one of these leaders.
Yes.
For quite some time already. So he's not an outsider. These people know him. He has a relationship with them, and they know exactly what they're going to be getting from Joe Biden. So,
yeah,
they're not too upset of what's being handed to them.
Yeah, very true. I also have here in my new notes also the Prime Minister of Australia congratulated Biden, the President of South Korea, and the Prime Minister of Japan as well. So Prime Minister of Ireland also congratulated Biden. So, I don't have much to make of those, but just something that I think is worth noting. We have leaders from around the world are congratulating Joe Biden, but most Republicans aren't, which is just kind of just amazing. I'm at a loss of words here. And our own Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said something pretty amazing earlier this week. He said that there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration, which that is our chief diplomat. He's the guy who, when other countries are behaving undemocratically and rigging their elections, he's the guy who's supposed to say, hey, knock it off. And now he's basically, backing up this bullshit conspiracy theory that the election was rigged here against Donald Trump. He's behaving undemocratically. So not a good look for America for him to be saying stuff like that. The Kayleigh McEnany said something ridiculous too. She said that Trump will attend his own inauguration when asked if he would be at the inauguration. So just wild stuff going on right now.
Yeah, I am so looking forward for the never-ending chaos to be over. I think it's briefly talked about it last podcast. The Biden administration is not something that I'm thrilled about, but my God, am I glad this clown's going to be taken out of office.
Yeah. Yep. And then in 4 years, we can go back to our normal Republican Democrat arguments, and he's probably not going to run again in 4 years. And, it will be an open contest for the White House. And I'm looking forward to having those debates in the future. But we got to get through the next few months, and we will. We all got to hang in there. Yeah. Moving on.
I had this information pulled up and ready to go here, but moving into the fall, moving into the colder weather, we are having a massive spike in coronavirus cases. So as of now,
everybody's spending time indoors, and it's just going to be more so. We got Christmas coming up, Thanksgiving first, and then Christmas. 2 major holidays, potential super spreader events. Not good.
Right. As of yesterday, our daily coronavirus cases, new cases, 150,000 a day.
Jeez.
So, luckily our deaths are not, they haven't caught up with our cases like they did early on in the year. But, thank God we have better treatment. We kind of have a better understanding of what we're dealing with now. But not to say that, that could all change too. if the ICUs get overrun, if there's not enough hospital beds, we could be in a terrible situation again where places like New York are burying bodies on an island. We've already seen the mobile morgues come back. I mean, do you remember the
Yeah.
first? Like, what did it feel like to you? Like the first time you saw a mobile refrigerated morgue at a hospital?
Dude, it was like the end times. It was like, like a zombie apocalypse movie, kind of. Just unreal. Something that you would see in a war zone somewhere, where you just have a ton of people dying. Um, really unfathomable. Yeah, I would have never guessed we would have seen something like that here.
I was completely shocked. The first time I saw that, like the drone footage in New York and putting those bodies into the ground. That was, I mean, I never thought I'd see anything like that in my lifetime. Let alone, the mobile morgues whenever they started showing up. Now it's just like commonplace. It's like, oh yeah, good thing they got those on the ready because they're gonna need them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like different world right now.
But do not fear, because Joe Biden has his coronavirus task force in place. I think we got like 13 people on the list, I believe.
Yes.
And they don't seem to me, any of them don't really seem to be hacks. They seem to be. I mean, I don't really know these people well at all, but just looking at their titles and their former titles, it seems to be a pretty good list. I think you have a little bit more information than I have about it, but maybe I'll go down the list here and stop me if you want to comment on a particular person. Maybe we'll do it like that.
Sure. And it's definitely like something could be said for all of them.
Yeah. All right. Well, you take it away, and I'll just.
Cool. Right on. All right. I'll try not to make this too long here, but
Yeah.
first off, what the coronavirus task force is, this is in Joe Biden's words. The advisory board will help shape my approach to managing the surge in the reported infections, ensuring vaccines are safe, effective, and distributed efficiently, equitably, and free, and protecting at-risk populations. So, as Zach said, we got 13 people sitting on this board. So instead of going through what their credentials are, how they really came to be in this position, whatever, I thought it'd be kind of cool just to go over just something interesting about them, like may or may not be related to the field. Most of the time it is, because I mean, you can look into these guys; they're all big brain, Ivy League, elite class dudes that are more than capable to have this position. So I was kind of go down the list kind of quickly, and things that you may not hear in the media. All right, so sometimes this first guy, Rick Bright, you'll definitely hear him talked about in the media. Why did they talk about Rick Bright? Well, he was the whistleblower from the Trump administration who alleged that his early warnings about the pandemic were ignored and ultimately led to his removal. But he's an American immunologist, super big. He was a big deal a while back.
Yeah.
Also, fair warning.
I remember that.
Fair warning, I'm probably going to get some of these names wrong, so just please forgive me. Because this is my first time hearing about a lot of these people too.
Mm-hmm.
We have Vivek Murthy. He is a former Obama Surgeon General. He was made a big deal back when he was getting nominated for Surgeon General because he made an argument that gun violence should be declared a threat to public human health.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which I think.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah, that was a policy that Yang ran on too, wasn't
it? It might have been. It might have been. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look into that now.
But he was the guy that kind of started the whole movement. He also he released the first ever Surgeon General's report on drugs and alcohol, and that highlighted like how crazy the opioid epidemic was and just drug use in the country in general. So he was a big guy back in the Obama administration. Next, we got David Kessler. He comes from the H.W. Bush administration as the Food and Drug Administration commissioner. This is kind of funny. He moved quickly to make the agency more efficient, cutting the time needed to approve or reject new drugs, including AIDS drugs, and more vigilant in protecting consumers against unsafe products that inflated label claims. It was also under his watch that the FDA enacted regulations requiring standardized nutritional facts labels on food. In one memorable action, he had 24,000 gallons of Citrus Hill orange juice seized because although it was made from concentrate, it was labeled fresh.
Wow.
We have next a Luciana Borio. She is the vice president at a company called NQTel, an American not-for-profit venture capital firm based in Arlington, Virginia, that invests its high-tech companies for the sole purpose of keeping the CIA and other intelligence agencies equipped with the latest in information technology. And the Q in the name NQTel stands for the fictional inventor who supplies technology to James Bond.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, we'll see if CNN talks about that.
Yeah, so I guess we know who Q is. Corny joke. Sorry.
All right, Zeke Emanuel. He was one of the architects of the Affordable Care Act. He's an ex-Obama health advisor. In his book, Healthcare Guaranteed, Emanuel said that universal health care could be guaranteed by replacing employer-paid health care insurance, Medicaid, and Medicare with health care vouchers funded by a value-added tax.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think there's better things we can do with a value-added tax, but that is an option.
Yeah. Indeed.
All right, we have Atol Gawande. In his article in the New Yorker, which compared the healthcare of two towns in Texas to show why healthcare was more expensive in one town compared to the other, it was reported to affect Obama's thinking, quote unquote, dramatically. It was an interesting story between you had I can't remember which towns in Texas it was, but one was it was basically centered around the Mayo Clinic, and they had way cheaper coverage, way better access, better care overall. And the other town was just basically a ran by the for-profit healthcare industries where premiums were super high, quality of care was just shit. Next is Celine Gounder. She is a filmmaker and host of the podcast Epidemic, which is just all about the coronavirus pandemic, and also the host of the American Diagnosis podcast, which is about health and social justice.
I could see her being like the spokesperson kind of for the task force, given the podcasting background there.
Yeah, but she's also a practicing a doctor, and I think she's a professor, all kinds of accolades. She's big deal and well known, and especially in political circles. All right, next up we have Julie Morita. She oversaw the response to the 2009 swine flu pandemic, Ebola, and meningitis in Chicago. Not too exciting, but everybody kind of forgets about meningitis and swine flu and Ebola in Chicago.
All right.
Next, we have Michael Osterholm. In 2017, he published Deadliest Enemy, Our War Against Killer Germs, which explores public health emergencies, including antimicrobial resistance, emerging infectious diseases, and the threat of an influenza pandemic. It proposes a 9-point battle plan for survival for dealing with these threats, including solutions to antimicrobial drug resistance. Sounds like a stellar dude to have on the team.
Yeah, that guy was also on the Joe Rogan podcast, I think in May, maybe.
Holy shit!
So so he's definitely worth it. It was a good one. I definitely recommend checking that out. Michael Osterholm on the Joe Rogan Experience all day. I never understood that, but
Check it out.
yeah. Training by day, podcast by night, something like that. He says, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell it means, but anyway, Michael
All right.
Osterholm, check him out on the Joe Rogan Experience.
All right. We're getting close to the end here. Next, we have Lois Pace. In April 2020, when the United States first considered pulling their funding from the WHO, Pace led an open letter to the Trump administration to reverse course. The letter was signed by over 1,000 charities, medical experts, and healthcare companies. Not that exciting, but it also kind of indicates a will to re-enter the WHO, which should also come at no surprise to anyone at all. Next is Robert Rodriguez. In July of this year, Rodriguez treated patients along the Mexico-U.S. border during the COVID-19 pandemic in Texas. He also researched heightened stress and anxiety levels among physicians during the COVID-19 pandemic. Kind of, mental health for your healthcare workers. Probably a solid guy to have around.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last one. This guy named Eric Gooseby. I really couldn't find anything like crazy fascinating about this guy. However, Gooseby has served on the board of directors of the Clinton Foundation since 2013. So,
all right, seems like a solid list to me. Now, let me just ask a question here. We got this task force in order. Do they have any power or ability to begin enacting their measures right now?
no, I mean, they could influence public opinion, and that could, result in pressure on local elected officials. But
Yeah.
as they exist now, no, they have no power. Even after Biden takes office, they really don't have any power. They're just advisors.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely something important. I think that's worth mentioning.
But these are people that even right now they are largely responsible for shaping the conversation around COVID-19.
Right. If they just talk about the importance of wearing masks and maintaining socially distant, hopefully the country will follow suit. I mean, these are well accomplished people. They have the right backgrounds and experiences to be a part of this task force. So hopefully people heed their advice.
Yeah,
it's important.
And I was trying to find, dig up, bullshit on them, like, things of like maybe like this person's not so cool. And the only two people I could find was the person that works for the CIA and the person that works for the Clinton Foundation. I think those are the only two that's like,
Who were they again? Which ones?
It was Luciana Borio.
Uh-huh.
She's a vice president of NQTEL. And then Eric Gooseby. Yeah, he's on the board of directors for the Clinton Foundation.
And you found shit about them?
Yeah, I mean, like being involved with the CIA is not always a good thing. And then the Clinton Foundation is also not always a good thing.
Right.
I mean, could I find anything damning that would, disqualify them for the position? Probably not. But
just being tied to those organizations, people are going to be a little bit skeptical. But yeah, all right, that's a definitely a solid team overall. It's good that he is acting on this so quickly because it is the number one issue right now. And even though, as we just said, they don't actually have any power or authority, just it shows that the incoming administration is going to really take this virus much more seriously than the current one. And they do have the ability to influence public opinion. So I think it's a very good move getting this task force off the ground as quick as possible. So so already Joe Biden, I'm giving him 2 thumbs up. Like I said in the last podcast, he has the opportunity to be an awesome president, and I'm rooting for him because I'm rooting for the country. I mean, I'm not crazy about Joe Biden, but the opportunity exists for him. You know, he can be an awesome president, and I hope he will be. Um, any other notes on the task force before we move on to the chaos
Yeah,
at the Pentagon?
yeah. Let's compare and contrast with the current administration and what a dumpster fire it's been, especially within the Pentagon. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing about the current administration, maybe not the biggest, but one of the things that really stand out to me is at every turn, Trump is undermining what his task force has been saying about the virus. You know, like Dr. Fauci is constantly under threat of being fired. So if you're a hardcore Trump loyalist, you're probably not going to trust things that Dr. Fauci are saying, right? And that does not help the nation's response to the pandemic whatsoever. Especially, you know, if we are the land of the free, and you know, there's this debate about whether or not the federal government has the power to enact a federal mask mandate. I don't think they do. But that means our leaders should be telling people, hey, please just wear a mask. All right. I can't make you because, you know, we don't have the ability to make you, but just be a smart person and care about your neighbor. Wear a mask. Our president's hasn't been doing that. And the people who are saying we should wear masks are being undercut at every turn by the president. So yeah, what's what's your takeaway?
No, I have nothing else to add on that one, man. You nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the administration's just complete failure to take this seriously from the beginning is definitely what took away his election chances this cycle. Had he effectively managed the pandemic in the beginning, had he been stronger on COVID, yeah, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are now, and he would likely have, as someone else put it, he would have moonwalked to re-election.
Moonwalked. One thing I was surprised about, but after really thinking about it, maybe not so surprised, was that there weren't nobody on that list, Joe Biden's list, are people who are currently on Trump's team, right? There was really no continuity there.
Well,
I mean, and
there was Rick Bright. He was part of the Trump administration. He was the guy that whistle blew.
Yeah. So I understand that. That doesn't really count in my mind. Like Fauci, for like, why wouldn't Biden include Fauci in his task force?
I mean, Fauci serves at the pleasure of the sitting president. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't think that relationship could be a thing, and just because he does serve at the pleasure of the president, and if he's going to serve, I mean, is there some level of interaction between the NIH and the president-elect? I would certainly hope so, but I'm also not entirely sure. I mean, like, let's see, the 13 people that he's bringing in now, they're all embedded within those types of circles too, right? So like everybody on that list is well known within those communities. I'm sure they communicate. I'm sure they have relationships with all the correct people. So even though if it's not Fauci or Birx, mentioned by name, right. It's still all the most important people that probably are involved with this task force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gotcha.
That's completely my assumption. I could be completely wrong, but they could just be free balling this whole thing, and
yeah,
but I doubt it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll have to see. I mean, there's a chance after Inauguration Day, when Joe Biden becomes the president, we'll have to see. I mean, there is a good chance that Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci could be asked to join the Biden task force. Maybe it's just politics right now because so many Trump people are wanting Fauci to be fired. I mean, they're actually chanting "Fire Fauci" at some of his rallies. So maybe Biden just kind of wants to completely distance himself, even though Fauci, in my mind, has done an okay job. I think most people think he's done an okay job, but there is that significant minority that wants him fired. And if Biden wants everybody to wear masks and wants to beat the virus, maybe Fauci just isn't the best person politically to have involved. That could be part of the calculus. I don't really know. Well, I guess we'll just have to see what happens after Inauguration Day.
Right. There definitely is a decent argument for the removal of Fauci. I think he's done an okay job. I'm not really a big Fauci guy. I think, he's not the only infectious disease expert in this country. We have some of the best and brightest minds in the world here. And one thing I'll probably never get over was how they lied to us about the effectiveness of masks early on in the pandemic.
That was a very big deal.
Yeah, and that was Fauci, that was Birx, that was the CDC. The WHO, everybody. So they lost a lot of credibility with me.
Yeah.
With that move because it was completely uncalled for and people died because of it.
Yeah, very good point. And still today, the anti-maskers, they like to reference Fauci when he originally said that masks don't help that much, and they ignore all the time since then when he's reversed course on that. That definitely wasn't right. You got to be straight up with the people, tell them the truth. If there's not enough masks to go around for everybody, just tell people, don't buy a mask because we need to have masks for our nurses and for people who are on the front lines. Do not stock up on masks. You don't need a closet full of them at home. It's, that's what it came down to.
Yep.
Got to be truthful.
Rule 8, baby.
yeah, indeed. All right, should we move on to the Pentagon?
Yeah. So this Pentagon thing, this is pretty wordy, and there's a lot of people, and it can be hard to follow. So I'm going to do my best for this to make sense here. It's been crazy in the Pentagon ever since Trump took office, with so many people being fired, people resigning, a couple people retiring. But it's back in the news again because there was a lot of high official people that were either removed or resigned. I think the largest of them being the Defense Secretary Mark Esper, who was once again fired by Twitter, which is always a good way to do it, right?
Very. I couldn't imagine being fired by Twitter.
By the president.
Yeah. It's just like a real slap in the face. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. It's just, there's a professional way to go about it, and then there's a cruel way, and just not right, not cool. But why was he fired? All
right, so there's a few reasons here. There's always been a bit of a contentious relationship between Esper and Trump. So Esper's only been in there since July. He was put in there after Jim Mattis was fired as well.
Mad Dog Mattis.
Yeah, which also Mad Dog was a nickname that was made up by Trump. That wasn't even his nickname in the military.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You remember what his nickname was? Mad Dog, Jim Mattis. Nah, we can't remember. But if you Google it, yeah, his real nickname in the military was not Mad Dog.
Huh. Ah, interesting. I didn't know that.
All right, so the contention between Esper and Trump. So back in February, the Trump administration signed a peace deal with the Taliban that basically said, hey, for 14 months, if you guys keep your shit together, maintain the the terms of the peace agreement. We're going to pull out. We'll be on our way. Esper didn't exactly see eye to eye with that. He said he personally didn't have a strict timeline on it. He said May of next year, but the timeline was premised on everything moving at a set pace. So he wasn't completely in lockstep with the Trump or the troop withdrawal there. He also broke with Trump publicly, opposing the invocation of the Insurrection Act of 1807, which would be the deployment of active duty troops in American cities. He, quote, said, "The National Guard is best suited for performing domestic support to civil authorities. I say this not only as Secretary of Defense, but also as a former soldier and a former member of the National Guard. The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations right now, and I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act." And then the last part was he also supported the renaming of military installations named after Confederate generals.
That last point, I don't see how anybody could really be against that, unless you actually are a white nationalist. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. It's just a name. And should we really be naming things after traitors, essentially? I mean, that's essentially what the Civil War was about. A number of states essentially broke away, wanted to become their own country. They, turned their guns against the Union and threatened to pull us apart. And now we're naming military bases after them, after those generals. It's just, I don't see how anyone could be against changing the names of those bases. Anyway.
Yeah, that's also, that's another example of Trump dropping the ball on the populist narrative. Changing the names is a populist position. More people in this country support changing the name than leaving them as they are. It's like, Trump ran as a populist, and I guess you could say he is a populist, but he's not a populist all the time. And that's something that disappoints me about him.
Yeah.
All right. So the person that is replacing Mark Esper, his name is Christopher Miller. Miller is actually a pretty badass guy. He served in the United States Army Special Forces in Afghanistan. He was a company commander of the 5th Special Forces Group. In Iraq, he commanded Special Forces units. In 2006 and 2007, his promotion to colonel was approved. In December of 2009, Miller served as a program executive officer for a rotary wing of programs at the U.S. Special Operations Command. And he also received a Master of Arts in National Security Studies from the Naval War College in 2010. But what's also kind of interesting about this guy was he was kind of like the first troops on the ground in Afghanistan and Iraq. He was so it's interesting that the guy kind of responsible for kicking the whole thing off is going to be the guy that pulls us out of there. I mean, in terms of serving at the capacity of a soldier and when he did, I think it's pretty cool to have someone like him, at the head of the as Secretary of Defense. Yeah. But I think it'll be interesting. I mean, he's a pretty pro-war guy. At least he seems his impression of him is pro-war to me. But if he can pull us out. He also did serve as a defense contractor in 2014. I could not find any information on that whatsoever. I could find out like anytime I saw it mentioned, that was it. He worked as a defense contractor. No more information. Like, right. For who, for what, how much did he make? What company was it? Like, what were they involved with? Nothing. So kind of curious to find that. He also did serve in the Trump administration as a counterterrorism. Oh, this is actually pretty interesting. He served the Trump administration as a counterterrorism advisor on the United States National Security Council. In 2020, he became Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Combating Terrorism. This is where it gets interesting. He was involved in designating Iran, Hezbollah, and American domestic terrorism as threats to the United States.
Interesting.
Right. So whenever we talk about American domestic terrorism, who we include? Do we include white nationalists? Do we include Antifa, Black Lives Matter? This is the guy he was pulling those strings earlier this year. So if he's more anti, if he thinks Antifa and Black Bloc are a larger threat than what Mark Esper did, maybe he's not so, maybe he's more apt to pull the lever and invoke the Insurrection Act than his
the narrative that I was getting from the mainstream media this week regarding this is that the people who Trump is putting in place, it wasn't just Mark Esper, it was several people who were either fired or, resigned. A lot of times when somebody resigns, they're actually being forced to resign. We don't really know, but there were a number of exits this week within the Pentagon. The narrative that I kind of received from the mainstream media is that the new people coming in are all Trump loyalists, people who seem to be like they'd be more willing to just listen to the president, just pull us out of Afghanistan, or maybe, support the deployment of the National Guard in our streets and whatnot. What's your take on that? Do you think these individuals are going to be loyalists or what?
It's hard to say. I haven't seen any interviews with Chris Miller, so I really don't know for sure what type of man he is. So I perhaps somebody asked him that question point blank and how he really feels about it.
Yeah.
Does he feel that's appropriate as the Secretary of Defense sends troops against his own people?
Yeah.
But yeah, that is probably the most important question to be asking when we're talking about these new people coming into these roles.
Trump tweeted, I think on October 7th, this is before the election, that he wants to have all troops out of Afghanistan and home by Christmas, which, is not that far away. We're talking about a little bit over a month now. Do you think that's possible? Is that going to happen? Is that what this shakeup is about, you think? I mean, Trump, we're past the election. It's not like, he should have been a little bit more vocal about that leading up to the election, because I think that might have won him support. That kind of is a populist position. I think let's bring our troops home right now. And it's more the industrial military complex that wants to keep us engaged abroad. And I guess that is basically the establishment. Trump has basically, at a few rallies, I have heard him talking about the military industrial complex, how it really is a real thing and a problem. But like during the debates, I don't really recall that coming up that much. It definitely could have been something he could have brought up a little bit more. But I don't know. We got a month and 10 days before Christmas. Do you see all these troops coming home? I think there's about like 4,500 troops in Afghanistan. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's what I read.
Yeah, I mean, look, Trump is a bullshitter and a con man. He has absolutely no intent of having those troops pulled out of there by Christmas. I mean, will there be perhaps some drawdown? Will some troops return home? Yeah, maybe, probably. Well, I mean, some of them, not most of them. And sure as fuck, not all of them.
All right. So if his real intention is not to actually pull the troops out of Afghanistan, why the shakeup? Why do you think this shakeup is occurring?
I think, all right, does Does Trump want troops out of Afghanistan? Sure. But I think, but that's other things with Esper that we talked about. Beyond, the but I
So
couldn't
this is
really.
just a punishment type thing. He's trying to get rid of unloyal people.
Right. Yeah, Mark Esper, despite in media circles, Mark Esper was referred to as Mark Yesper because the media kind of portrayed him as a yes man all the time.
Right.
I guess Trump is looking for, even even more of a yes man, one that's not going to speak out against him whatsoever. And I'm not sure if that's going to be Chris Miller or not. And I mean, certainly looking at if there's some really good resources out there. One's by the Brookings Institute. So if you just search tracking turnover in the Trump administration and find the Brookings.edu link, it shows you everybody in the administration who's quit, who's been fired, who's retired, and the list is way longer than what you think it is.
Oh, it's unreal. This administration has been more of a revolving door than my last job.
Yeah.
It's just been people coming in, coming out left and right, and no stability. And really, that's not that great of a thing for the country. I mean, you don't want the same people being in the same positions forever, but the turnover rate has just been way too high. You do need some stability.
Right. On the inside, the turnover rate, like the people directly in the White House administration, turnover rate has been 91%.
Jeez.
And then most of these positions were already in like our fourth and fifth filling of that position, which that's definitely not an indication of a stable government that we have right
now. Yeah. Just ridiculous. My concern. So I don't think the high turnover is a good thing. I kind of understand a little bit. At least I try to understand. That Trump wants loyalty and whatnot, and I could understand during his term a lot of people coming and going. But the election is over now. We have a new president coming in. If anything, this should be the most important time for there to be stability. And I'm afraid that this shakeup has more to do with hurting Joe Biden and his ability to know what's going on once he takes office than anything else. I don't think these firings are for the betterment of the country. I mean, we know that the Trump administration right now is blocking Biden's team from receiving intelligence briefings. That's concerning. That's very concerning. And I'm wondering if the firings at the Pentagon are basically because of the same reason. They just don't want Biden to get good information.
Yeah, and that's a terrifying prospect. And think about it. I mean, we're already in the situation now that the people that were put into these positions now, by the time the Biden administration comes to power, which is in 2 months, the people have only been on the job for 2 months. So what kind of transition, like what kind of handshake effective transition can you have from one administration to the other when you like the people that they're going to be dealing with have no idea what they're doing already?
Right.
Like if you know how to do a job after 2 months, you're doing a really good fucking job.
Right.
Like if you know the ins and outs of being a Secretary of Defense after 2 fucking months, God bless you, man. You've done the impossible.
Right. Because usually these people in position when the new administration comes in, they'll help train the new appointees and whatnot. We're basically going to have somebody who's in training working with the new administration and their appointees. It's just crazy. It's something that you can't even make up, but yet it's happening. Do you think that Biden? So the first thing I'll say about the the intelligence, the lack of intelligence briefings that Biden is getting, it's not as concerning as it could be, because Biden basically already knows the job. He was the vice president for 8 years. He worked closely with Obama. He sat in on those intelligence briefings. He knows what they're about. He knows pretty much all the world leaders. He knows what's going on for the most part. But had this been somebody who wasn't that experienced, for example, if this is something that Obama did to Trump, that would have been a really bad thing, like potentially disastrous for the country. I mean, Trump never held public office before. Just imagine if he didn't get any intelligence briefings before taking the oath of office.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. Well, I'm sure even when Trump was getting them, he wasn't paying attention to them.
Right. I don't think he was either.
But I guess one argument you can make is that the election hasn't been certified yet. I think that goes down on December the 8th, I think. Mm-hmm. So if he's not getting it by December 9th, then we do have a real problem.
Yeah.
But I also, does Joe Biden not already get some level of classified briefings after I know the president does, but does the vice president also receive some of that information?
He might. I don't really know, but I do know that there are certain things that's being blocked. I don't, he might be getting some kind of briefings, but he's not getting all the information. I'll put it that way. It's just concerning. Back to the Pentagon. Some of the incoming people also have baggage too. They seem to be controversial people. You got this retired Brigadier General Anthony Tata. I don't know how he pronounces his name. He, over the summer, was initially appointed by the president for some kind of position in the Pentagon, and that position needed to be approved by the Senate. And there was bipartisan opposition to that because he's made numerous Islamophobic and offensive comments. He claimed President Obama was a terrorist leader who was trying to help the Middle East more than the United States. And now he's basically some kind of advisor at the Pentagon. You also had someone who's going to be directly advising Christopher Miller. What is his name? Defense Secretary Christopher Miller. I'm sorry. Retired Army Colonel Douglas MacGregor is going to be a senior advisor to Secretary Miller. I guess acting Secretary Miller, we should say, because this isn't going to be voted on by the Senate. It's just someone kind of filling a gap until Biden takes over. Interestingly, he accused back in 2019 and in 2012, even going way back, he basically said that Mike Pompeo and some other people are taking money from Israel.
Wow, that's an accusation.
Yeah. He basically said that Mike Pompeo has become very rich from the Israeli lobby. And now they're both serving in the same administration. So that's a little bit odd.
Yeah. What motivation would he have to make that up?
Yeah, I don't know. Just interesting. I mean, and it doesn't surprise me too. This White House has been a White House in chaos and constant conflict, and it's been one big ongoing soap opera. So have to see how this plays out. But yeah, just something I found kind of interesting.
Yeah, there was a lot more people that exited the Pentagon this week as well. But man, like you're really starting to get into weeds and probably some lower level positions that aren't as exciting.
Yeah,
But
the cleaning house essentially.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people did resign and protest. Some people have resigned and not said anything at all. So it's a big mixed bag.
You know, I never understood the protest resign. I never understood it. It just defeats the purpose. You know, if you really feel strongly about something and you're in a position to you know of power where you could influence policy, you resigning only means that somebody who's willing to toe the president's line is going to take that position. That doesn't help the cause at all. And we've seen a lot of people just resigning, you know, during the Trump years, and it's just something I never really understood.
Yeah, I think maybe they're given the option. It's like, look, man, you can resign and leave with your head held high, or we can fire you, and we will just fucking bury your name in the ground. So,
well, it's not even just the people working for the executive branch. It's also, I'm referring to people like Jeff Flake, who was the senator from Arizona, who decided not to run because he was a Republican, but not a Trump Republican. And he didn't like Trump, but didn't like how things were going. And instead of fighting for what he really felt was like, he just decided to retire at the end of his term. I don't understand that mentality.
man, I'm not sure. I can only speculate. You know, I just think if you're surrounded by an administration, or if you find yourself in a position of power, of real power, like the Secretary of Defense is a pretty fucking powerful position, and you're being forced to do things that you really don't think are ethical, the right thing for the country, that like maybe it's for a clean conscience, because maybe sometimes the decision is out of your hands, even though you might be, the most, at the head of that organization. If you don't support invoking the Insurrection Act,
Yeah.
maybe worse things could happen to you. I'm not sure what it's like to be in that inner circle. I'm sure it's got to be a very strange, bizarre experience. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I definitely see your viewpoint though. Like,
Yeah.
like, hey, well, but why aren't more people more outspoken more of the time, and really work as a check against the administration? I don't really know.
I mean, at the end of the day, Trump could fire people, right, that aren't going to invoke the Insurrection Act or whatever he wants to do. But firing somebody is a lot more controversial than somebody just leaving on their own accord.
Right.
So, I mean, if you want to try to roadblock these policies that Trump is trying to push, you should just publicly say, hey, you're going to have to fire me. And I think that would be a much more admirable and much more effective approach, because even though Trump likes to say you're fired, you can't fire everybody. At some point, it just starts to really look bad. And I just think that would have been a much better approach.
Right. And on top of that, I mean, if you quit, you can't collect unemployment.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. That's funny. All right. Well, what else do we got? We got anything else for today?
I think that's it, brother.
All right. Well, it was definitely a good one, I think. We will be back next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends and your family if you enjoy our content. And I guess take care. Have a great week. Be safe.
Bye, everybody.